Welcome to part 2 of module 1 of this course on risk management fundamentals for farming entrepreneurs. And in this part 2, I'm basically introducing myself from the perspective of my farming experience. I think it's just right that you understand exactly what I've been doing in the last 10 years in my farming journey. So the early days of my farming experience kind of started way back. For those that are in Zambia, I was actually born on the Copper Belt, which is part of the northern part of the country, in a town called Chililabombwe, just next to the sea, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And as a young boy, being born of parents that had this heritage of farming, we used to do weekend farming, if you like. There's a place called Kalilo, for those that are from that part of Zambia will obviously remember that place. So we used to do quite a bit of farming every weekend. We get there on Sundays. So I kind of had an early baptism into farming. And then as years went by, in Zambia, the first Republican president had this policy called go back to the land. What that meant is that when you retired, you actually needed to go back where you originally come from. And at that time, there was actually some kind of facilitation where the government would provide some land for the retirees to settle back home, if you like. And so in 1990, when my parents retired, we relocated to the southern part of Zambia, where my parents originally came from. And we settled in a place called Mbabala in the southern part of Zambia. And that's where, again, I had some very early baptism into how do you begin to develop a farm, because that was a big farm, almost 200 hectares and heavily forested, and you literally have to start planning on how that farming enterprise is going to evolve. The ringing of trees, stamping. Of course, at the time, the environmental ethos around deforestation was not really pronounced in the early 90s. And so, we went by developing that farm. I was a young boy then. And then once the farm kind of evolved, we focused a lot more on our commercial crop in Zambia, which is maize. That's part of our staple food. And of course, cattle farming, that's part of the heritage of the people hailing from that part of Zambia. So mainly, I had a very good orientation into maize production and, of course, cattle farming in the early stages of my life. Then, along the way, after I grew up, Panuka Farm was born around 2007. It was just bare land then, about 1.9 hectares. And I'm actually emphasizing that because one of the many questions that I actually get every time someone gets to understand that I'm actually into farming is, how big is your land? Of course, in a separate course where we look at how do you optimize the factors of production, we actually go into details looking at the land as a factor of production. But I must actually indicate that Farm 1 was just 1.9 hectares. Of course, now we've acquired a bit more land. It's 5 hectares. That's Farm 1, which I think kind of resonates with an average agri-SME, given the land constraints across Africa. Of course, in certain countries, people still have the privilege to own large chunks of land. And so, on that 1.9 hectares, I started farming different things. And I must actually indicate that I've had the privilege of farming over 25 different crops. I actually started with sweet peppers in open fields back then, and then did quite a lot of tomato production. Very good experience. Tomato farming is one kind of farming that really does a very good baptism into the farming realm. And then later on, I also did farm okra and then gravitated into broccoli and cauliflower farming. At some point, I actually did also plant Brussels sprouts and green beans. Obviously, again, that's been part of some of the things that we have done. There's also a crop called rep. It's a vegetable. I think in the eastern part of Africa. I think it's called Sukuma Wiki or something like that, something closer to that. And also, one other crop that I've actually farmed quite a bit is cabbage. And I have some very good stories to talk about cabbage, which actually led us into transitioning to what we focus on now. And at some point also, I actually did farm watermelon. Very good production that actually came out of that. One thing that I actually pride myself with the team is that every time we actually get onto new crop, we invest quite a lot of knowledge. And so when you actually look at the watermelons that we did farm those days, they were very good. And then obviously English cucumber, which even now remains one of our core crops. And by the way, at some point, I was one of the biggest strawberry farmers in Zambia. I think we had a portfolio of almost 15,000 to about 20,000 plant population of strawberries, and I had a good experience of doing strawberries in open fields and also in the shade nets. And if you actually check on our YouTube channel, I actually have a dedicated section or playlists where I kind of just document my experiences in strawberry farming. So that's on the crop side. But on the livestock side, obviously, besides the fact that I was born and bred with experience of looking after cattle, I've had quite a very good stint in poultry farming. I actually started with broiler farming back then and very good at it, by the way. But then eventually gravitated to egg layers and we're actually quite good at that. And you can actually also check my farming footprints on even egg layers. I have a dedicated playlist on the Panuka Farm YouTube channel where you can actually find a lot of insights around egg layers and many other crops that I've actually indicated here. So that is the kind of portfolio in terms of my farming experience in terms of crop and livestock farming. And this is a farm, like I earlier indicated, that started as bare land. But then moving on, Azad 3, the farm that started as bare land had quite some very monumental visitors coming through, starting with the World Bank Managing Director. And later on, obviously, the big one, the US Vice President also visited this enterprise that started from bare land on 1.9 hectares. So my farming experience is actually quite well documented. Like I indicated, I've got over 200 videos that I've done on the Panuka Farm YouTube channel. So get out there and just check out my farming experience.